Hello, ghouls and goblins. Nick here. Hope everyone's doing well today. I am back with another book review. We're on to book 5 of the Chiller series, Strange Brew. Strange Brew is a very solid book. I enjoyed it quite a bit. We'll get into the actual review here in a moment after we go through the cover art. But it was pretty well paced. It was tight. There wasn't really a lot of filler. It sort of got to its point and its concept. So another solid entry, and I'm excited to talk about it. So starting off with the cover, we have this really cool spell book here, and it's got all this great spooky stuff coming out of it. I assume this one is also a Tim Jacobus cover. We have the worms here, very reminiscent of Go Eat Worms. I didn't really go and check to see if these worms came before Go Eat Worms were published, but it's cool to see the purple worms in a different cover. Of course, I love how that one is outside on the border there. Very cool. These eyeballs are great. I love their orientation here in this great looking slime, this goop. Some claws coming out from the side, very reminiscent of this guy here. Those bats are pretty great. And I like that nothing stands out, particularly it's trying to, a combination of all these things to show off, how spooky the spell book is. And of course, I love that wax candle in the corner. Kind of reminds me of Tales from the Crypt Keeper, how he would have his, wax candle and, his storybook. But yeah, awesome cover. Definitely one of my favorites so far in the series, just because of all those little details. And of course, the colors are really well, particularly with the purple and yellow. Great color combo. My favorite color is purple, so it's always nice to see that. So looking at the book, first impressions, you think, is this going to be about witches casting spells, kind of like Macbeth and the witches in the three witches in the cauldron making spells? Is there like an evil wizard, something like that? So of course it does have something to do with, like spells, magic, and it's cool because each spell, own recipe to go with it that the main character Tori has to go and gather to perform the spells. And then a very, very interesting, a lot of them it's nothing like, Eye of Newt or like the Tail of a Cat or anything like that. I know like the very first spell, this spell with like mud water and horsefly wings, there's like some insect parts, there's like spider legs, stuff like that, cobwebs. Some of them are just kind of very, I don't know how to describe it. I guess as spooky as you can get without putting animal parts in the recipes. It is, kind of fun. And of course, the recipes are in like different font to show that it's, a recipe. But sort of going into the story and how these incorporate in the story, I have our main character, Tori. She lives in this small Illinois town, nothing to do. And summer is coming up, summer break. Her best friend, Heather, unfortunately, is going out of town with her family to Florida, to Disney World. And Tori can't go because of her little brother, Max. He has baseball practice and he can't miss any games. So his parents are very focused on making sure he goes to his games, his tryouts, so he can get on the team, of course. And Tori is already jealous of Max, and is just very resentful that they can't go with Heather's family to Florida because of Max. So she's dreading being stuck there all by herself all summer. So she's pretty bummed about that. So kind of getting out the main struggle, I guess, with the kids. Um, there is a mysterious red spiral notebook that appears with Tori's name on it. And it's totally blank except for the very end of the book. At the back, there is the first recipe. So she's with her friend Heather, and they're like, "What is this? Where did this come from? I don't remember this notebook. It was very strange." And for fun, they decide to follow the recipe and see how it goes. And of course, it's like the mud water, horsefly wings, spider legs, all that good stuff, all that gross stuff. And then the instructions are they have to stir it in like a big cauldron or a big pot, which they find a big pot. What happens is it's supposed to make rain, like rain come down, which of course the girls aren't believing this, and they put all this stuff in the pot, the strange brew, so to speak, just really gross, and they're stirring and stirring. Nothing's happening, of course. But then at some point, the spoon stirs on its own, kind of in the center where this, whirlpool is forming. Starts to rain and thunder, and it's just torrential rain. And it's so intense and just so sudden, like totally up to their like waist. It's that bad. The girls are kind of like, "Whoa, this is really cool that this happened. There's no way that this from the spell, from this recipe." So that's kind of like the first taste of the magic in the book. The second spell comes, well, I guess I need to mention this. The rain is so bad too that Max is at his first practice game, and because of the flood, his game gets canceled. Thus, he can't, go and do the rest of the tryouts, which is very unfortunate in his case. And so the next big spell that happens, and I'm trying to think where she finds it, like under her desk or something. This one is really gross. It's not as long of a list of stuff. I can't remember it, but basically what it does is it's the spell makes all the kids in the cafeteria throw up, like violently throw up and keep throwing up. So gross. And at that point, Heather, who in this case is the voice of reason in the book, also affected by this spell, she's like, "This is terrible. This is really dangerous. You don't need to do these spells anymore." So Tori, I guess, kind of thinks about it and is kind of conflicted because she really likes, I guess, performing these spells. It's very exciting for her. Receives this recipe to do another spell, and she's curious like where these spells are coming from, who's doing these spells. Kind of some foreshadowing at the beginning of the book, just kind of placed where before Tori met Heather and they became best friends, Tori was alone and had to make up her own friend called Celeste. Celeste was her imaginary friend for a long time, and it sort of turns out that Celeste is real, and she is the one that has been providing these spells for Tori to do. I think like the next spell, Tori, is kind of like this weird ointment that she makes. Anyway, it makes her fly with these fireflies, and it takes her to like this tree and this pond, and there we meet Celeste as she comes into form. She's not imaginary anymore. She's, like a blonde girl with blue eyes, and she's excited to see Tori. And she says she wants to be Tori's best friend, and that she's back, to have fun with her, kind of thing. And at some point, Celeste mysteriously trips her friend Heather, because her friend Heather is, getting in the way of Tori doing these spells. Heather's out of school, but, Tori promised Heather that she wouldn't do the spells anymore. Celeste is kind of pushing her to do them. And so the next major spell is more of a fun one where it's like this bubbles coming out of like the students' desks in one of her classrooms, and mountains of like this foamy bubble stuff, and the kids and even the teacher are having fun with it. making like foam snowmen, like, snow, and sliding down big foam mountains in the classroom. Anyway, the principal catches on. He comes in. He's very furious how this happens. The bubbles dissipate. He's trying to find out. And then when he finally gets to Tori to confront her about this, to see, he starts having these sneezing fits. So it gets cut before she can, get in trouble. At this point, Tori, has her reservations about it, thinking, he could have, got hurt really bad, kind of thing. Celeste comes with one more recipe for Tori to gather and says, "This one will be different. It's fine. You're my friend." And she's starting to kind of fight with Heather at this point. So she's leaning more to Celeste's side, and Celeste being her real friend, kind of thing. Anyway, the last major spell is crazy. Essentially, they're back at her school in the principal's office for hours, and spell requires her to gather up all these papers. And while they're doing this, there is a reference to Snoop Dogg, which I thought was pretty funny. And Tori listening to Snoop Dogg while she's gathering these papers and these materials for the recipe. But anyway, she pours the concoction on the papers, and Les, makes it go up in flames. And essentially it burns down the middle school, which is just very extreme, particularly like in a book like this, just arson. And Tori has her reservations about it. She feels terrible. People come and they, like onlookers at the school, and they see, and one of them is Heather, and Heather knows that Tori had something to do with it. There's a little bit of that ointment left that made Tori fly. So she went and flew back to like the tree in the pond area where Celeste was, and she just was honest about Celeste, about she cannot do this anymore. This is too dangerous. And Celeste has kind of lost her patience with her, because Celeste is doing all this for her. And Celeste really wanted to be her friend, but she goes in and explains why she did each spell. Like the first one was so Tori can get, back at Max. Next one was in the cafeteria, like with the bully. Foam one to get a good side and show that can be fun. So Celeste has done all this work and is not feeling appreciated for this. She wants to be Tori's friend. And so she ultimately turns and she becomes something more wicked. I was curious, like, if Celeste really was Tori's imaginary friend, if she was some kind of ghost. It turns out she literally is a figment of Tori's imagination that happened to manifest. Near the end of the book, she's going to go threaten Heather now. And so Tori quickly goes, after being up with Celeste all night going to the pond. She barges into Heather's room. Heather, of course, is still upset with her, trying to explain, hey, it's been Celeste, my imaginary friend I told you about. She's the one that's been doing this. I'm so sorry. Celeste, comes in, and Celeste is basically going to get back at them. And it's really interesting, like sort of the last kind of finale that Celeste does. She has these sneakers, and she takes her shoelaces off and the muddy white shoelaces, and they transform into these big snakes with paddlers, and they're charging and attacking the girls. And at this point, Tori realizes what the solution is, or what she hopes the solution is. Celeste was created by her. It's up to Tori to destroy her, basically, to counteract her and not believe in her. And so that's what she does. She uses a lot of focus. Turns out that it works. Narrowly miss being bitten by the snakes. And then Celeste, is going to make like these stuffed animals and like animal patterns on Heather's bed come to life to get them next. Tori is, of course, too strong for Celeste and saying that this isn't real, you're not real. And so she kind of like deflates and It's kind of like a scary description, like Celeste's mouth is open and she's withering away, and like a balloon, and her mouth's wide and just kind of disappears. And of course, the snakes turn back into shoelaces and they just disappear. And of course, the stuffed animals and the animal prints, they turn back to normal.
Hey everyone, here I am in post audio. I wanted to put a picture on screen of the UK edition of Strange Brew. It actually features the snakes that you see at the end of the book. For a while, I didn't really understand what they were. I thought they were actually seahorses at first glance when I first saw it. But cool little cover there. And I wanted to be sure I put that in the video before I ended. So here is the cover of the UK edition with the shiny, scary snakes. Very cool.
It's happy ending basically, and her and Heather are back on good terms. So not a bad little book. I rate it a 7. It's very solid. I think it's interesting how Tori, even though she wants to keep doing the spell, she's able to sort of counteract Celeste in the end, which I guess is also like a representation of herself and sort of fighting that need for that next kick, so to speak. I've seen some people online, like through Goodreads reviews, YouTube reviews, that it's about addiction, and I think it lines up very well to that. I also enjoy the parallels to jealousy, where Tori's jealous of Max, and then Les becomes jealous of Heather, which I think is a very interesting kind of parallel. But essentially, Celeste is kind of like the subconscious of Tori, and Tori is fighting against herself, not giving in to like the addiction part, and overcoming that for her friend. Very interesting book, and you can really read into this one more in the subtext, which was really cool. Not all of these books do that, and so I think those people that kind of pointed out talking about it's very fitting, and I can definitely see that in the book. So that's the review of Strange Brew. I think one of the more underrated villains too in the book, Celeste. Very interesting kind of arc character. Was not expecting like a monster or villain like that. So very interesting there. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.